All right, the topic of the hour, I guess.
I guess we have to get to it.
Hmm?
There was stuff that came from places. This isn't the one that I wanted to talk about initially. We got a Mark Stein update. So some of our earlier updates on this saga came from Grange, who is a disputed source and also somebody who I was looking for the post. I was looking for the post. I couldn't find it like in the last 20 minutes before the stream, but somebody from it was either the Hoop Collective or it was one of those podcasts basically said that that Grange report about the locker room discord was basically like straight from the team, right? And then you look at Grange and you think, okay, I don't think he gets a lot of reliable stuff from the team, but maybe he's not that guy. Maybe he's the guy who the team just like knows if we need to put something out there, he'll do it for us. So like that's his role in things, which is fair. Um, but we've got some updates from him regarding David Thorpe said it. Thank you. Kenyon just put that in the private chat for me. But yeah, so the thing with Grange is like it's hard to understand where like information is coming from, how reliable it is, or even like in kind of in line with what I'm hypothesizing, how like what the purpose of it is. Because this happens in like the information economy in sports media, is that not all information that's sent out is necessarily about putting something true out. It's about putting something out that improves your angle. It helps your narrative thrive, and like it's kind of a manipulative way to get your point across and improve your circumstances and whatever you're dealing with at the time, whether that's a trade negotiation or a contract negotiation. So to get kind of information from a bigger source, but to keep in mind a source that I think spoke a lot during our coaching hiring process, but I don't think got a lot right. So again, we got to take everything lightly and just like think about it as information that is being put out for a reason, and we have to figure out what the reason is. So the Indiana Pacers have emerged as a legitimate trade partner with Toronto for Pascal Siakam, sources tell Mark Stein. Siakam is entering the final season of his contract, and reports of his potential availability have increased. The Atlanta Hawks have also logged interest in Siakam, while other teams could also emerge. Siakam has signaled a preference to remain in Toronto, but the departure of Van Vliet is believed to have led the team to prefer giving more runway to Scotty Barnes and OG Anunoby. And the last part, the Raptors are indeed far more prepared to surrender Siakam than initially realized. Okay, so first of all, my thoughts on the Indiana Pacers part of it, I don't buy it. I don't even think it makes sense if you look at the Pacers team, and we'll do that after me and Kenny kind of get our initial thoughts out. But if you look at that team, if you look at their salaries, if you look at what it would take to make a trade possible, there's not even necessarily a framework that makes sense, because if the Indiana Pacers, a generally young team, are trading for a 29-year-old Siakam, who we don't, from what we heard, isn't really looking to sign extensions with teams like Portland and Atlanta. So I don't know what would compel them to, would compel Pascal to agree to an extension with Indiana. Put that to the side. If they're pursuing that kind of a player, their goal is to win now, or at least in the next 2-3 years. So with that being the case, you would look at a piece like Miles Turner and think, why would they, trade for Pascal, but then trade Miles Turner and then have a hole at the center position, right? And also, why would we want Miles Turner? Because we have Jakob Pertl. So you take Miles Turner out of the situation. Now you have to look at the other pieces and even just figure out how they're going to get salary to Toronto to make this trade work. Are they going to trade us Buddy Hield? Again, another player that you would want in your win now pursuit. And a player on our end, Buddy Hields aren't really what we're looking for. I mean, we have Grady Dick right now, but that's one player. He's a much bigger player. He's a younger player that can be molded. A player like a Buddy Hield isn't what we've been looking for. I don't know how highly we would value him. Um, Look at their other players. Are we gonna be into the idea of having TJ McConnell and Daniel Tice? I mean, at that point, we're going full rebuilds, basically. Not full rebuild, but we're leaning into our younger talent and giving them opportunities. So now, GS400 says Turner and Nemhard. So that's my thing of like, I just don't understand from Indy's perspective. Like, if you don't have Miles Turner on your team, you have a hole at the center position. So you're now trying to win now with a generally young team and a hole at center. it kind of doesn't make sense. So this is my thing. We'll flush this out in greater detail later, but I can't see the viability of a trade that would make sense. I've thought it through. I've take issue with a lot of different things. I kind of believe that the fact that Indiana is being thrown out in this is more about Toronto trying to get Atlanta's trade offer to be better, if anything, because Indiana is a team with a lot of young pieces. If you go to Atlanta and say, "Hey, Indy's in the race," Atlanta might think, "Okay, we have to do better than some of the young pieces." That might compel you to put somebody on the table that you've been keeping off the table up to that point. So I see Indiana strategically as more of a negotiating piece. I don't actually even necessarily see them being a viable trade candidate, but we'll put that to the side for a second. Siakam's entering the final season of his contract, and reports of his potential availability have increased. The final year of his contract thing is interesting because I saw a piece somebody put out about how basically, um, like there's an angle to be looked at that with Fred VanVleet no longer being on the team, the Raptors may have a harder time being good enough for Pascal to even get that all NBA odds thing. Like it has nothing to do with Pascal at that point. He can play great, but his team also has to be good enough for him to get that type of recognition. So he might have a harder time getting this all NBA nod that in theory could get him the Supermax. And that could be a part of his thinking of maybe not wanting to take that bet again and wanting the max deal right now, which could be one of the things that causes a fracture between him and the organization. I posed the question during one of our streams, I think about 5 days ago, where I said, why, if Pascal wants to stay in Toronto and we want him in Toronto, and he's no longer Supermax eligible, and we would never like insult him to say he's not a max player, especially during the offseason, that Fred VanVleet got a max deal. I have a hard time imagining that I have a hard time understanding why there's not a extension that's been announced yet. And there's only kind of two reasons that that could be the case. And that's either Toronto doesn't want to pay him or they're open to trading him and they don't want to tie him down to a deal that means they can't trade him for a few months now. So it appears as though that now that the moratorium has ended and these extensions can be finalized, still hasn't happened yet. So there has to be some truth to the idea that Toronto is willing to trade him, and basically the issue of the extension could be the reason. Pascal might look at it, well, like, you know what, this is where I want to be, but this team's probably not going to get me the All NBA nod. I'm not going to take the risk of maybe I get hurt and that messes up my contract. So I want that max right now. And now Toronto's looking at it like, well, maybe that's not really what we're into. And this could, conceivably be a reason. The reason could be we want to give a larger runway to Scotty Barnes and OG. GS400, thank you for all the engagement, by the way. Obi Toppin was very effective playing small ball 5. I think being effective at playing small ball 5 is good and viable and probably would be an effective thing alongside Miles Turner. I don't know if that's the best idea as that's the plan. Like that's just what we have at the 5, but it might be what they choose. Who knows? I'm not really all that familiar with what they had behind Miles Turner. Was it Jalen Smith at the 5?
It was.
It was. I mean, Jalen Smith's kind of on the
that.
lighter side, so maybe that's what they want to do. Maybe that is their vision. I don't know. I'm not rolling yet with Indian Siakams, but yeah, Kenyon, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Obi Toppin, I mean, yeah, he can play the small ball 5, but I don't think that's a permanent solution. I don't think that Siakam playing the 5 is a permanent solution either, because that's when he tends to get injured, a la shoulder injury. So I don't think that is where they're taking it. So if you take out Turner, also from a Raptor standpoint, you just signed a guy, okay? We just talked on the last stream that this front office moves. I think it's easier and faster to watch paint dry than to see them make moves. So at that point, right, you're seeing them move very slowly. How long would it take them? Because you can't move Turner and you wouldn't be able to move the guy that you just signed until potentially the moratorium. So that's what, December or something like that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
also, you just sold Jakob Pertl because he said so in his presser. He mentioned Siakam by name in his presser. He mentioned Siakam by name right after the presser with William Liu, basically saying that that's one of the leaders that he expects to be here, that he was sold on. So you basically said, hey, re-sign with us. We're going to re-up you on a deal. And then to turn around, we're not talking months later that where you've seen it work or not
Talking
work or
days later.
whatever. We're talking days later. You're going to flip-flop and say, nah, we're good. And oh, by the way, we're going to bury you and Koloko on the bench. I don't know about you, but to me, it doesn't make any sense from that standpoint. There is only one piece that I'm interested in. And by the way, people keep trying to say Jarris Walker. What are we doing? So if the plan, okay, is you're complaining about how there's a bad fit with Siakam and Barnes and Jakob, but you want Jarris Walker, who is an even worse shooter. Okay. This is what I don't understand is that you're trading away the best shooter of all of them, and then you're like, no. Barnes can do it. Well, then you're really setting Barnes up to fail.
Yep. You're banking on development in a crazy way. Like you're banking on a jump.
Someone told me this stat. I'm going to tell you the stat right now. If Barnes increased his shooting by 8%, which is very difficult
in terms of volume, or
in terms of percentage.
Okay.
So 8%,
yeah,
better as a shooter, he would still be below league average.
Yep.
Okay. I don't think that this is talked about enough. I really don't. And I'm not trying to diss the young man, but it's just like we don't really know what he is yet. And we just had a front office that called him a child, a baby, in his presser. Literally in his presser. These are Masai's words. You can go back and watch, and he calls him a baby. He says, Scotty is just a baby. And then you also essentially had to go and fly out 8 months ago on a road trip to essentially tell him to play harder. But this is the guy that you are now suddenly trusting with your entire franchise with nothing behind. And then, like I have said before, if you look at the packages, so there's only one piece, and you know the piece that I'm hinting towards, because it's one of it's the best Canadian on that squad. So if it's not that, I don't want to talk about it. Right? Whether it's OG or Siakam, even if it costs OG and plus stuff, like that's really the only piece that I'm interested in. So at that point, it's like, what are we doing? Like, if you're going to trade Siakam, again, unless you are 100% certain, and I know that there are some content creators out here that are that certain, that literally I've heard that Scotty Barnes is going to make a leap into all NBA this year. Not all-star, into a top 15 player this season when he regressed last season.
Wow.
Okay? People are that confident. I don't know about you. I'm very confident in Scotty Barnes. I don't know if I'm that confident that he can make that level of a leap based on what I've seen so far. Okay?
See, yeah, no, I don't think... Like, I think it's fine to say that, okay, we're get talking there all NBA, by man. His prime. Like, we're talking about his prime, because here's the thing. If he gets to all NBA at age 22, so what are we saying? He's going to be a Hall of Famer in his prime? Like, he's going to be
That's what they're saying. That is what they're saying. That is exactly what they're saying. And I'm not saying that he can't do it. I'm just saying, if you look at Vince Carter, because this is who people are comparing him to, right? Like that level of a dude, right? Look at Vince Carter, years 1, 2, and 3. Look at Chris Bosh, years 1, 2, and 3. They improved every single year. So how is a guy supposed to go from what he was over the past 2 years, where it's not, to be fair, in some areas he did improve, yes, but overall it has been incremental, to then making more than a Siakam level leap in a year? I need to see it first. And it doesn't, like, this is my point, is that if you're not going to get Mathurin from a deal, you're getting Andrew Nembhard. Yay. Okay. I'm not trying to diss Andrew Nembhard. I'm just saying, like, does Andrew Nembhard project as either being a top 15 player or an all-star. So then you're putting your entire franchise's hopes on just Scotty Barnes becoming Luka level, and then hoping that down the road you can have enough pieces to piece together
Yeah.
to get him a running mate. Because frankly, I don't see OG becoming all NBA because his offensive game isn't that.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing with the Indy situation is that you look at the team. I have a hard time understanding what's in it for us or them under most like circumstances. Because again, they're a team that has a pretty long runway ahead of them because they have a young team that seems like it's building towards something. To then cut that off and say, "Hey, 29-year-old max player, we need that guy. We're going for it." That's a crazy pivot to take as a franchise. It makes very little sense. Like internally, the only way I could like rationalize it is if basically Rick Carlisle is getting itchy and he's like, "Hey, here for a good time, not a long time," kind of a thing, and just the franchise is buckling. But even that, I have a hard time understanding. And like, well, if that's who he was, like I could see him maybe taking that kind of a stance if he didn't step into the rebuild in Indy, but he stepped into the rebuild. He didn't
I
just
mean,
get the job right now.
I'll give you a counterpoint to this, and it's not necessarily just Siakam. I keep going back to OG as my hint, right? Is that number one, recently the reports have been that they have $36 million in cap room next year and are targeting literally a 3-and-D wing. Not forward, wing. So, and then they've been linked to OG multiple times. You look, if you're talking about Mathurin as a potential get, I don't see how Mathurin fits in their system if OG's there. But my point is that they have the pieces that they are getting ready for consolidation. So I can see them trying to consolidate, whether it's OG, whether it's Siakam. Sure, I can get it from that standpoint. The packages without Mathurin don't make sense to me because I go back to the Atlanta, even your friend who's the OG man who is, okay, I'm in he is just like, yeah, I'm not really impressed by this package, right? It's like without and then without Kobe Buffkin, people are trying to sell us on Patty Mills. That how does that make sense? I don't make it make sense, please.
Don't please nobody talk to me about Jalen Johnson. Even AJ Griffin, like it's okay, but it's not particularly exciting. Like none of these options particularly make any sense.
There's a Sacramento pick this year. They can't give us the Spurs swap because we would need to give them something for that.
Sacramento pick, man.
The Sacramento pick is interesting, but it's like Sacramento is poised to get worse this year, but they're not going to be out of the playoffs, right? So then it's like, okay, again, it really depends on what you're trying to do. Are you trying to convey your pick this year? To me, just take the medicine, get it over with at the very least. And then, sorry, I'm ranting a bit. So
go ahead. No, you're doing great. Go ahead.
But it's just, I just don't really understand that combined with the sales job of Pirtle a couple days ago. And then why would you pick up guys? Here's a good question. Okay. Fred VanVleet's gone. Why would you spend all your money on Dennis Schroeder, okay, when you still have, if you're going to tank, essentially, and go into a rebuild, when you still have guys on the market that could have been had for the mid-level exception? I'll give you one name who just signed a qualifying offer because the merry-go-round ended and he has no home. PJ Washington. You wouldn't want PJ Washington on this squad?
I'll take it. We can add to our team, but like I said, like none of this is okay. This is a serious move, and we're taking strides. Like none of those seem to be on the board for us. So, like you can't also like it's a delicate balance between we left the guy, we left negotiations too late, and now we're in free agency losing a guy for nothing, and then just like completely just giving up on somebody and trading him for Jalen Johnson. right?
What did Jake
Like,
Fisher say the other day? He said that we have become known for basically, I'm going to paraphrase him a little bit, but basically for snooping and being into other people's business and not being serious about conducting business. So I'm sure
yeah,
that they are actually having conversations. I have no doubt about that. I
yeah.
don't think that they're serious. We were in serious conversations for Miles Turner for 2.5 years to get Thad Young. How's that for a wet fart?
And then eventually Jakob Pertl, right? So it's like we pulled the plug on that completely. So yeah, like I think what Jake Fisher also mentioned that basically like the vibe around how the league in terms of how we're being received as trade negotiators are basically let's talk to you for an extended period of time to figure out how you value our players, and then
Snooping into
once we
other
have
people's
that
business.
information, yep, once we have that information, bye bye. So yeah, with that being the case, I think that I can understand other teams being frustrated, and I can understand other teams frankly kind of just not being strung along anymore. If that's something, if that's a reputation that we've built so far, I have a hard time understanding why teams are continuing to be strung along, which is where like when you see these things popping up, you have to think this came from somewhere. So what side could it come from, and what's the angle? Because somebody put this out there to be like for their own benefit, and you kind of have to work backwards to understand who would do it, what's the benefit, who stands to gain from this, right? Like,
Here's another thing. You are telling me, and listen, I get it. They chased after the dude, but you're telling me that they had their entire run it back claims hinging on Fred Van Vliet? On Fred Van Vliet? He ain't that dude. I'm so no offense. Like I'm happy the brother got paid, but like he is not that level of a guy. Is
he
like
also is somebody who's been declining, in my opinion, because of injuries and kind of a pretty nasty run of games that he had to play about a year and a half ago. But it's not even a guy who's on the up or somebody who's been consistent in any level. So
but you're
I'll be
telling me that you're gonna just okay, Fred's gone, so well then let's pack it up. He wasn't even the best player. Like
I
it
mean,
doesn't make make it
he
make
was a
sense.
player. He was a player that I
Yeah,
don't think that this was a long term thing, but I
no,
think that there were some games where Fred wasn't playing that we looked a little bit better, right? And I think those
yeah.
were specific to certain matchups, right? There's certain matchups where if you're a lot bigger than the other team, which is basically what we'd be able to do when he's not playing, then you know it benefits you. And there's other kinds of matchups where not having Fred there was work to our detriment. But the point is it wasn't even like it's a hands down. Oh, we're a worse basketball team
No,
now.
I'm listen, I'm not trying to say that. All I'm saying is that you made moves that are still run it back even without Fred.
Yeah,
And so like okay, Fred's not back. You're telling me that all your run it back things hinged on Fred like he was Kawhi. That's my
yeah, yeah,
point.
yeah.
It's like that makes zero sense.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And we don't even have our pick unless you want to go deal with the only team that's willing to deal with us, which is the San Antonio Spurs, because they know that they can pick our pocket again.
Yeah, because we're best friends in like the weirdest way, right? So what I would say is that do you like what I'd ask is, do you feel like you can put together a line of rationales that makes sense for what we've seen so far? Like, do you think you can put together a thought process that checks out with everything that's happened? And before Kenyon answers, just want to let everybody here know that you should be commenting on these videos. You should be liking the streams. I tagged Kenyon's channel, Basketball Rewind, in the title, and it's in the description of the video as well. So you can click any of those links to go in his channel and run up his numbers. These things help the channels grow. But yeah, go ahead, Kenyon.
Yeah, no, well, it doesn't make sense. I mean, okay. I realized because I've been spending some time listening to other fan bases talk, and that's a
Yeah.
very interesting thing. And not all fan bases sound schizophrenic, okay? Only ours does. And typically, what I'm realizing is that your fan base tends to mimic you, like the stability and strength of your organization. Okay, Masai or Bobby or whoever, how this is being run right now, what do you think that this does for culture? What do you think that this does for players? right? If you're always out there and you're anxious, right? Like think about how anxious everyone is, and then you go and look at the players from the player perspective, because everyone forgets the human side of this stuff, right? And you are expected to play and perform every single day, right? I can tell you from more than likely from Pascal's situation, if I were him, I think he's doing the right thing. As crazy as that sounds. Now, I know that the Supermax is scary and stuff like that, but from his perspective, it's like, yo, these dudes keep jerking me around. So you're gonna pay me my money. He was
I think it's a
15
smart
votes
bet.
away.
I think it's a smart move for him to decide, you know what, it's not worth gambling some type of, the risk of me getting injured and now my value is tanked. The odds of me getting a super max aren't that high. I'm just going to secure my money right now.
I don't think he's gonna
I
get the Supermax, by the way, because I don't think he's
Oh,
gonna be
here's the
all
thing.
NBA.
So this is what I'm saying. There's a very, very, very low percent chance that it happens. It would actually just not be smart for him to not take his extension and bet on getting the supermax. So he's doing what he should be doing. His agent is giving him sound advice. Um, and from the Raptor side of things, honestly, so here's my thing. I asked you that question for the to just kind of see if you had an idea. I personally have an idea of like what's going on with the Raptors right now, and what I think is
Posturing.
that I know. I just think the Raptors are like suffering from like smartest people in the room syndrome, which is a concept that just came up. But like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the worst place to be in is when you think you're just the smartest person in the room, and it really blinds you from acknowledging some of the issues that you might have in your way of looking at things. And I think, in a way, we've heard Masai tell us to our face his thought process over and over and over again of just we win, 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 win. What you do is win. The culture is win. Everything is about competing. Everything is about progression and going forward. And like there's this like he's constantly belittled the idea of not trying to win at every turn. And I think in winning a championship by having that way of thinking, he's emboldened, like that thought process has been emboldened within his mindset. So now the whole thing is like, you know what? I don't have to do anything else. I did this and it worked. So I'm going to, win, 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 win. And again, like obviously the easy thing to say is, well, you haven't, right? And of course we haven't. But the point is like we always trying. We're always trying to get better at every turn. And it's not like there's necessarily a problem with the idea, but the execution has been bad. And at some point, I think you have to take a step back and look at your failure in executing a game plan and saying, okay, maybe the flaw in this game plan is that it's very hard to execute. And maybe we should find a game plan that's a little bit easier to execute. And I think that's the problem is that, like, when you get caught up in just thinking that you're the smartest person in the room and you just are that guy, you tend to not be introspective enough to truly arrive at the right conclusions of your the right conclusions of like your history and what you've done and what you've gotten right and wrong. And I think that's my take on thing. My take is that like he's kind of it's been in front of us the whole time. He's gonna try to always get better. He's gonna always try to win, and it's frankly just failed miserably. I think this past year, um, the year before, like the fact that we pivoted from Marc Gasol and Ibaka to Aaron Baines, like not to necessarily focus on Aaron Baines too much, but the point is we tried to get a veteran to try to stay good. But the reality is, at that point where that team was, there was no point. We
So
weren't going to be great, right? But that's always been the attempt. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say. So I don't disagree with you in terms of like where the source of this is coming from. So that
Yeah.
I full agreement.
Yeah.
I said, okay, here's a good. So do you listen? What kind of music do you listen to?
R&B, hip hop, some pop.
You're familiar with the guy Biggie, right?
Yes,
Okay, 10 Crack Commandments. Okay,
I'm familiar.
you know
Yep.
where I'm going with this.
Yeah, keep going, keep going.
You never get high off your own supply.
Yep.
And I was talking to Beyond about this, and it's like, and he said, I think these dudes are getting a little bit high off their own supply.
Yeah,
Right?
it's funny because you say that. I've heard that exact phrase used. I think somebody on Reddit. I saw somebody say
Yep.
it. Just
Yep.
that's what this front office is suffering from. But go ahead, continue.
It's true, because it's like at some point you get spoiled by certain situations. You brought in OG Anunoby. He shot, I think, in the 50s or 60s percent. No, it was 50 percentage wise from free throw, and now you see what he's done. Right
Yeah.
when he first came in from college, you see Pascal Siakam, and you get spoiled for choice. And the problem is that these dudes think that they can take anyone from the local Y who's not in Miami apparently, and teach them how to play. And it just doesn't work like that, because there's like there's situational awareness. I don't like using IQ because it can be used in a negative connotation. But it's just there's a lot more to this, and you're teaching a lot of dudes how to play basketball. You hear how he treats the bench. Every single year, it's like, okay, you have your starters, your core unit, but then the bench gets ignored, right? And it's like, it's because he views it like a soccer team with that bench, where it's like you have two different squads, and the bench is supposed to be internal. It's like whoever rises to the top makes it. That
Yeah.
doesn't work. You can't have 5 dudes all learning how to play. You should have a mixture, right? And it's just, to me, it's extremely frustrating, and it's frustrating for the players as well, because if the bench doesn't work out, right, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed, because you run these dudes into the ground. It's disrespectful to their bodies that they sacrifice on the line. It's, like literally sacrificing their bodies. You saw Pascal, you saw Scotty playing like almost damn near 40 minutes. There were times, I don't know about you, but sometimes I have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the game, get a drink, a sip of water. Sometimes I would do that. I come back, I would leave. I'm like, oh, Pascal went out. It's commercial break. All right, gonna be right back. Take a piss, all that kind of stuff. Come back. By the time I come back, dude's back in the game. I'm like, what happened? Like, like they're like, that's crazy. That's crazy. And the other thing is that, like, every single time we have a coach and they ask for something, right? And then all of a sudden, the coach is the fall man, right? You get rid of the coach. The coach is basically saying, give me a bench. Okay, I've told you that he played that wrong, because he should have played the guys to show that they sucked. Fair enough, though. Okay? And then all of a sudden, we now have a bench. All of a sudden, you now have Kawhi. Like, it took that long to get that. It doesn't. Again, I keep asking you, make it make sense. You're not making it make sense so far, because you're as confused as me. We just said that the guy is high off his own supply. That doesn't mean he's acting rational.
Oh, it's specifically saying they're acting irrational. And again, if you need more evidence, people, our organization tried to revolutionize basketball. Basketball is a sport that's been played for like over 100 years by like millions of people. Many brains have put their input into this sport, and we've progressed it as a basketball community for as long as we have. And then Messiah Nick Nurse said, we're going to come up with a new way of playing the sport. That is a huge, you have to have a huge ego to even think you can reinvent a sport as a small group of individuals with no evidence that it's going to work. Vision 6ix9ine, there was no evidence that it was going to work. It was an attempt.
I'll say this. I think the actual overall vision is fine, because there's other teams that are doing it or versions of it better than we are, right? Utah.
Mm-hmm. 100%. But that's the thing, is like the
Orlando Magic.
Other teams doing it better, right? The thing they're doing that's different from us, I think, makes it a different thing. So like, you like having players that basically, like, Utah doesn't have a lack of threes the way we have. Orlando, to a certain degree, has a lack of threes that we have, but also like they were significantly worse than us for a reason. But also, I believe they drafted 2 guards, so I think they're tuned into it. I'm not familiar with the guards they drafted.
So Jet Howard's a guard, kind of, only because of his size. He's not really a guard. Anthony Black can't really shoot. I think the thing with Orlando, he's good though, but yeah. And Orlando is actually quite guard heavy. In fact, I would actually say Orlando's definitely doing this because their old GM, who's now their president of operations,
Yeah.
Jeff Weltman, was
They
part of us.
traded for him from Toronto. I think
Yeah.
we got a draft pick for him.
So I mean, there's nothing wrong with the vision, but you have to pivot, right? The problem is to your point, if you listen very carefully to I'd say the last 10 minutes of that press conference with Masai,
Yeah.
and it was actually Will Liu was kind of grilling him a little bit and saying like, well, like, can we get like basically paraphrasing again, can we get someone different or are you sure that this is going to work? And again, it's not that like having positionless basketball doesn't work. It's having positionless basketball and thinking that you can teach every single dude off the street how to play when some of these dudes can barely dribble and stuff like that or know what to do, that can work. He said in the presser, this is Masai saying, he was like, these other teams kept going until it worked. So you are correct. He said it with his own words. Go back, listen to it, and then you can make a stream out of it.
Reaction stream coming soon, people. But yeah, this is the thing, right? Like they tried to do something, and fair, we could say that there's like variants of it in the NBA, and there's evidence that there's encouraging signs for it, right? But the idea that you're basically, because again, we're trying to develop players while trying to win now. I also think that there's a fundamental flaw with trying to put those two things together in the face of it not working, and then just continuing to try to make the two things go together. But again, like, so essentially what you're saying is that like tactically we're going to overcome for the fact that these guys can't play basketball right now, which is a huge like
I don't think
assumption
that
and
it's
claim.
that though. Like I don't think it's that. I really truly think that they think that their development system is that good.
I definitely agree about that, but the thing is like you're playing guys right away or relying on guys right away, so it's like you're not even giving them the opportunity to be in the development
This is the problem
system.
though, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like if you have okay, I'll put it this way, right? And this is why I say like it's about, part of it is like the on-court basketball acumen that some of these dudes possess, right? If you swap, imagine Otto Porter was actually somehow healthy enough that you can actually play him 20 minutes a game without him breaking down. You swap all of his minutes with Bo Cruz's minutes. Are we not a better team? Right?
Yep.
But the problem is that, and that was like them trying to pivot, but that's like 2 years too late, right?
Yep.
Like it's the problem has been the learning process. Because again, I keep telling people, if you put, I'm trying to think. If you put Lonzo Ball, healthy Lonzo Ball, of course, on this team in the place of Fred VanVleet, Lonzo Ball, he fits Vision 6'9". When he's healthy, he shoots pretty much damn near close to 40% from three. Are we a better team?
Yep.
So it's not that the vision doesn't work. It's that you have so many projects, and then again, you think that within 6 months or whatever between now and training camp that you can teach these dudes how to play. How the heck is that supposed to work,
See,
man?
this is what I'm saying. I lump all these things together because at the end, like you're trying to execute this a certain way, and your approach is fundamentally not working. So, like the insistence that it's going to work is a part of the vision for me because we did it pretty uniquely. We did it in a way that like I haven't seen Orlando necessarily be so stubborn about their players the same way. Like I don't think they're trying to force the issue with Jalen Suggs the same way we're trying to force the issue with some of our guys. You mentioned Utah. Utah has a lot of threes, man. Like Utah has a lot more threes than we do. And it's
They
just like
drafted a walking bucket, 2 walking buckets.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Bryce Sensabaugh is a walking bucket. He's a walking bucket. And he was available late too. Right? And Keontae George. And some guy that we haven't even seen yet, which is Taylor Hendricks, who he can also shoot the three. And Taylor Hendricks is 6'10".
Yep.
Like the problem isn't the height. The problem is the other skills. You can't have Precious and Boucher and you know what I mean? And it's like thing and another dude and another dude and another dude where they all have the same skill set
Yep.
There's only 48 minutes in a basketball game.
Oh yeah.
And if you're trying to learn different skill sets, you can't learn them all at once. And so at some point you do need to have it's I keep going back to Dwayne Casey. People made fun of him, but you know what? You got to appreciate the dude. Here's your role card. You are doing two things. You need to have a diversity of skill sets. This is why the Grady dick pic is a great, as much as it's a funny phrase to say, it's a really important thing because guess what? He knows how to pass. He knows how to shoot.
Yep.
He knows how to defend to a moderate degree, right? So you're not teaching him. This is why I keep saying it's like you're not teaching a dude how to play basketball.
There's a skill set that exists immediately that you're going to pour into and hopefully see flourish into other things, but like also the skill set that you drafted isn't it's exactly what you're missing. So you could make the point that, and I think I've already seen some people touch on the fact that maybe there were better players, but like put that aside because it's way too early to make that kind of assumption. There's a possibility that there's a better player that you passed up on, but it was fine because you picked a player that suited exactly what you needed the best, right? So, and that's my thing too, is like eventually I think they learned, but because I looked at Christian Coloco as a departure from Vision 6.9 while keeping Vision 6.9 principles, right? Because that doesn't align with what we were doing the year before. But as a 7-foot traditional center, he's a player that's going to be able to like scramble as a defender in the way that like our front quarter forwards used to do defensively when it was just them, right? So we can keep a lot of our principles and they'll still function with a player like Christian Coloco. And obviously offensively there's a big gap because not a ball handler, not somebody that can really stretch the floor despite the fact that he really thought he could. But like we have enough principles to still have our style of play, but it's a little bit more encompassing of different skills. So that made a lot of sense. I think we just got rated. There's a spike in viewers, so I'm just going to quickly
Yep.
run through the chat real quick. Tom Graham says, enjoying the stream. Thanks, guys. Tom Graham is tuning in from Australia, so we really appreciate him being here with us. Tom, if you're ever interested in being on the channel, I think that'd be awesome to hear from somebody who has a pretty unique Raptors fan experience, different than a lot of us here. Then I got Prime up in here saying, big up all of them as the growth of the channel. I may not know what you're saying as I don't follow basketball, but be knowing you, I know you're talking facts. I appreciate you, Prime. 6 live viewers, 8 likes. Make sure everyone hit the like button. Let's get it up to 10 likes minimum by the end of the stream. Yes, sir. Shout out Manj. Shout out Harris. Big up from London. Let's go. 25 people in here. Make sure you're pressing the like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You guys are here from Sarcasm City. A lot of you guys are probably familiar with me, but not familiar with what I'm talking about. So if you just want to support me, make sure you're doing that. I have Kenyon's channel also tagged in the title and in the description of the video. So you can quickly click the link on that, subscribe to his channel as well, run up the likes on some of his videos. All the support is appreciated. Tom Graham says would love to. Okay, so Tom, Toronto Hoop Talk is on Twitter and Instagram, and I believe on Facebook as well. I'm not sure, but these are
Put it in
different
the
ways
chat,
you.
man.
Yeah.
Put your link in the chat.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat. But what I just want to ask is that whatever way you have of reaching out to me, let me know, and then I'll put the link in the chat to how to find me, and then we'll definitely be in touch. I'd love to hear your Raptors fan story and experience, and I think it'd be awesome to have you on the channel. Back to our issues with the Raptors. We talked a lot about the way of playing that we have and some of the pitfalls with it. Is there anything else you have left before maybe we transition to probably the last part of the stream?
Yeah. I guess my question is, what do you want to do now, based on the information that you have in front of you? What do you want to do, and what do you think that they will do?
Organization wide or Siakam specific?
Both.
Okay, organization wide. I think we should be a little bit more I think decision making should be rooted in what happens in front of you on a basketball court, right? Like what you see in front of you in terms of things working and not working should dictate how you make future decisions. So I'm all for thinking outside the box. I'm all for trying new things. I'm all for trying um, stuff that maybe doesn't make sense in the moment, but you kind of have to pivot from things as they don't work a little bit quicker. So I just want to see that a little bit more reflected in the thought processes and in the decision making. So that's one thing. Another thing I want to see organization wide is I want to see a higher hit rate on bringing young players into the system. So that's across the board. That's draft picks, undrafted players, low salary signings in free agency, biannual exceptions, um, minimum salary signings, uh, summer league players. Again, the bar isn't high, but if one guy makes it off your summer league team, that's awesome. If one guy in 3 years makes it off your summer league team, that's awesome. The G League. I remember Chris Boucher's season in the G League, and um, seeing a role, but also just being excited in what was going to happen when he got to the Raptors. And even though he's just a bench player, I think it's been exciting to see the development, and it's been reassuring to it was reassuring at the in the moment to kind of see that we had a plan for a player and we could see it through. So that's one thing. And then I guess last of all is that I want I want to see us building a team with defined roles a little bit better. So what I mean by that is if we're going to try to be a team that is opportunistic in the trade market for that final piece when it comes to winning a championship, um, we always talk about the Kawhi trade, but it's like those are the kind of circumstances that are going to lead to our next championship, whenever that is, if that ever happens. Fingers crossed. But you have to be within reach of that kind of a move being possible. And I think to be at that position when you're within reach, you kind of have to have a team around waiting for that player, so that what I'm saying is that team would have to have a certain roles checked off. So you want a floor general, you want somebody that's going to be able to command a team, you want your wing shooters, you want your big, you want your stretch four, you want your glue guys. I just want to be able to look at a team and see guys, because I was thinking when we drafted Delano Banton, I saw Delano Banton and I was like, maybe Sean Livingston, right? And I'm thinking of how I saw Sean Livingston on old Warriors teams, and I saw the role he had on, I would say, an important role on teams. And thinking about, hey, we drafted a guy in the second round. Do I expect him to be Nikola Jokic? Of course not. But if he can be Sean Livingston, that's awesome. And I can check that box to say, when we make that Kawhi trade, we have our backup point guard, right? But I just want to be able to look at a team and see that better, because when I look at a team and I look at our young players and even just the roster as a whole, I have a hard time even just being able to project what's going on. And the reason I think that, again, the reason I think that it's not good is because it keeps you far away from even being within one trade away from being good. And I just think that that's the situation you need to be in, because I don't think those championship winning trades are even possible that often, right? The Kawhi deal was a very unique set of circumstances. Unique set of circumstances don't happen all the time. So you have to be ready for when they happen. I would hate for us to miss the next opportunity. We know that Damian Lillard wants to go to Miami and he's pretty, he has his heart set on Miami. What if his heart wouldn't be set on Miami if Toronto looked like they were one player away, right? Again, it's just completely abstract idea, no truth rooted in it. But what if that would be the case, right? What if the next time a Damian Lillard situation happens, we're also not one player away. So that's just what I ran off a few things there, but basically I just want to see I think stuff that's more common sense. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, while achieving things can be hard, the plan can be simple in a way, because at the end of the day, basketball is basketball. We've watched basketball for a long time, all of us. We've seen a lot of great teams, and there is a pretty basic blueprint of you need your Hall of Fame talent. You need the players that complement them. If we're going to get to the Hall of Fame talent last, we need the players to complement them. So, these things are all things that feel kind of simple to just speak about. They're not the most complicated things, and these things don't have to be made complicated. So yeah, I want to see stuff that makes sense, that's simple, that you can look at it and you can look at what the next 2-3 years are going to be. and I think it would be a refreshing change. But yeah, what about you?
Well, and then specifically about Siakam this year.
Okay.
What do you want to
Oh,
see?
about Siakam this year. So I want us to hold tight until January. And the reason being is that I think a lot of our players, aside from Siakam's the outlier, but a lot of our players have had their value basically hit rock bottom because of the season we had last year. Siakam, his value is probably at an all-time high, but he's a player with only 1 year left on his deal, and he's not looking to extend his deal. So those aren't particularly good circumstances to trade a player in. So I don't clearly, based on what we've talked about with Indy and Atlanta, I don't like the trade offers. I think the trade offers could be better in the future. They could be better midseason if a team gets desperate. They could be better in the future if we extend Siakam. And again, circumstances are better in the future. But I think that across the board, unless you get a trade that is pretty head and shoulders, like not head and shoulders like above value, but just like clearly a good trade. You sit tight, you hope that you're better, not even better, you hope that you're good. You hope that your team looks good. So not everybody's value is high. And then once your team is good, you can look at how the team is playing and then identify, okay, what's missing, what's needed. Who
So
looks like they have a role that could suit us for the next 2-3 years, who doesn't, and then you make decisions then.
right. So and in terms of Siakam, are you against re-signing him next year?
Oh no, I'm not against resigning him.
Okay. Um. Interesting.
So
Okay.
here's the thing. So I'm not against resigning him. A caveat I want to put is that the game that we're playing, it feels like a game that may rub him the wrong way. So we might not even be in a situation where, if we want to resign him, that it's guaranteed. I just want to throw that in there because that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a
No.
part
No.
of
No.
the
I. I.
thinking
I
when it comes to
agree.
these things. But I think that ultimately, like, um, you have a guy that is making it clear that, or as it's being spoken about, is making it clear he wants to stay here. You have a guy whose value is demonstrated. And for as much as he takes care of himself in the era of sports medicine extending careers, I think re signing him is the best route if Jalen Johnson is what you get from Atlanta and Andrew Nemhard is what you get from Indiana.
Yeah. So I agree with everything there. I think in terms of Siakam, even if you're paying him, so there's a couple reasons why I don't think he's going to get a supermax. Number one, voters are strange. They tend to go and how they vote with trajectory. So if you had a down year the year before, you almost have to be that much better to get back into the race, unless you're one of these legacy guys, right? So unless I know the East got a little bit weaker with a couple teams, but unless the Raptors are top 3, top 4, it might be a little bit tough for him to get into that mix, right? Now, there's other circumstances. I know games played and all that, but I think that they are playing a game where, number one, based on reports, they haven't really offered the extension anyways. So for all those who are putting it all on Siakam, all the reports from Aaron Rose, from Will Liu, and others is that they haven't really offered him the extension. I think that they're trying to be cheap. They did the same thing with DeMar DeRozan, right? Part of the reason why DeMar was traded was because they didn't want to pay him, and because his extension or contract was coming up. I think the reality is, even if he does make All NBA, you're the only team that can pay him a supermax, a designated veteran player extension. So you don't have to necessarily give him 35% of the max. You just have to outbid the market, and you can. So that's why that's where I see things heading. And I agree with you, until someone actually gives you a halfway decent offer. Like I said, I don't think I'm being unreasonable by saying if I'm going to deal with Indiana, I want Mathurin. If it was going to be Portland, if it's not Scoot, then I wasn't really interested. But at the very bare minimum, it has to be Shaedon Sharpe, because you have to get someone, again, like I said, unless you think that Barnes is not just All NBA, but he has to be MVP level. Because if you look at Luka, who is All NBA level, he still can't get, you know, like on his own
He's
last
not a
year.
part. He's not a part of like MVP discussions.
He's just not. But even if he was, it's like how far did Luca get on his own? And like I'm sorry, but Barnes is not Luca. It's
Yeah,
not that is not a diss to Barnes, right? I'm
yeah.
just saying like it's really hard in the era of parity and in the era where guys are getting better and better coming in terms of their floor to be transcendent. And so unless you have I think the only guy that I can really think of is the guy that can't apparently has trouble staying healthy and you know allegedly has a whole bunch of milkshakes and stuff in his bathroom, which is Zion Williamson, right? He's the only dude.
Milkshakes in the bathroom.
But
My
it's true,
goodness.
right? Like it's like he's the only dude that you can think of in the past few years that has been drafted that is transcendent, like really truly like transcendent. Like whoa, like no one's stopping this dude on the court. So again, it's all hopes and prayers and thoughts and thanks, right? And it's and unless I'm getting a decent package for a borderline All NBA player, I just don't see it. I don't I'm not against it. The other problem that I'll say really quickly is about culture. You need some sort of level of stability. And I agree with you about the roles. That actually has to come not just from the coach, but it has to come from the front office down. It really does. And at some level, you need to provide that stability. If you trade, I get really worried. Okay. And this is not me trying to diss any player on our team, but I get really worried that if we lose Siakam for nothing, or if we lose Siakam for Andrew Nemhard and Jarice Walker, and that's all you have, I don't know if we have enough stable leadership on this current squad. Like, I don't think that, like, Dennis Schroeder is enough to stabilize that locker room and make it work. Not to mention that you would also still have dudes that are here that are going into contract years like Precious.
Yep.
So I just don't really know what happens in that sort of situation.
If you like this video, it's a clip from a longer live stream, which is the main way I do content at Toronto Hoop Talk. Live streams are an awesome way to keep people involved as I'm making the content. I love hearing from you guys as I'm speaking on issues. So if you like this video, make sure you check out the full live stream at Toronto Hoop Talk, and make sure you sub to the channel so that you see when I go live.